Should we get started or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I'm okay. Mitch, are you okay to get started?
I don't know if I'm okay, but I'm ready.
He's actually been okay for like the last 45 minutes while we waited for you to get on. So.
Oh, it wasn't that long. Yeah, it was only 10 minutes.
Yeah. You had to check the clock though.
Yeah, I did. I had to look. Maybe you were right.
As long as I can make people laugh, then I've had my day is
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so hello everyone and welcome to the second ever installment of Banter with Kanter, which is a conversation between me, Emily Kanter, and my father, Michael Kanter, who is the co-founder of Cambridge Naturals. Dad, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Michael Kanter. We started Cambridge Naturals in 1974. I and my wife are the founders, my wife Elizabeth Stagel, and then Emily, our daughter, and Caleb, her husband, came back almost 6 years ago to become second generation co-owners of our locally owned independent store. And again, since January of 1974, so that means 46 years.
And counting.
And counting.
And today we're thrilled to have Mitch Coven, founder and CEO of Vitality Works, here with us. Hi, Mitch.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. And we consider Vitality Works to be a close partner or even extension of our own brand because they are the makers of our very, very popular Cambridge Naturals brand, herbal supplements. You probably recognize bottles like this and our essential oils. Yes, there you go. One of your favorite products, I know.
Absolutely.
They do their own work in their local community in New Mexico, which is also, deeply important to us, that they're really rooted in their own community. And I'm excited to hear more from Mitch about that today. But Mitch, first of all, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm Mitch Coven. I am the founder, herbalist, CEO, president, formulator, and many other hats of Vitality Works, which I started on October 2nd, 1982. So we are not as old as Michael, but we're near 38. And I've maintained being the sole owner of Vitality Works all these years. And it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, a lot of history and a lot of present. And good morning.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, you said it kind of in an offhanded way, but that's actually incredibly novel these days to be the founder and still sole owner of a company in the natural products industry. Yeah. There's a very small group, so.
Yeah, so it's getting smaller by the month.
Yeah, so an impressive feat. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story and how and why you started Vitality Works in 1982, and how did you get into herbal medicine in the first place?
Oh boy, yeah, going back into those earlier days, I was interested in medicine when I was going off to college based on some childhood self-conscious traumatic health stuff that was personal and family oriented, and I was driven toward an interest in medicine and thought I was going to be a pharmacist or a doctor, and went to college in that, into that direction. While in college, I had many insights where I learned that Western medicine was more oriented towards studying disease and studied dead bodies and studied how to avoid death and disease. It had nothing to do with health and wellness and the study of health. And I went through a personal crisis and followed my passions and moved into different directions in art programs. But I had a roommate at the time that had juvenile onset diabetes when I was in college. And his life prognosis was very poor, and he decided to move into a macrobiotic diet. This was the 70s, we were hippies, and we were very non-conventional. We were protesting, we were radicals, we were reading very controversial stuff, and we were activists. And I thought, what the hell? I'll start to eat really well and spend 3 hours a day in the kitchen and do Tai Chi and do all this stuff. And suddenly, I, who had nothing wrong, felt so much better. It made me really wonder, what's health? And why am I alive? And how do I want to feel? And why didn't anybody teach me this when I was in grade school? And started to dive into the studies of wellness. And back in those days, there were really no schools. So I met some teachers, Dr. Jake Fracken, who is an acupuncturist, who is a interesting person, and he started to teach us about macrobiotics, and he was teaching us about Chinese medicine, and then through him we met Dr. Keith Block, who was an oncologist in Chicago, an oncology center, and we would go drive down to Chicago, the two of us, with one other person, and study with him about what's wellness, and I got hooked. I thought that this was something that they forgot to teach me, and I needed to learn this before I went on to my career. And the more I learned, to realize this is what I want to do full time. Came out to New Mexico seeking a graduate program in art school, and sat in on a class of New Mexico School of Natural Therapeutics. And they were teaching an herbal medicine course and a nutrition course. And at that point, I was studying herbal medicine from some folks I had met in Madison, Wisconsin, where I went to college, and thought there was a formal way to learn this stuff. This was the most advanced, organized way to learn what wellness was about, and decided to join that program, and studied herbal medicine from Robert Stevens, learned the traditions from Thomsonian-based herbal medicine, which went through Jethro Kloss and John Christopher, and it was a certain orientation. And when I completed that program, met a couple of the practitioners and thought I needed to learn more, so I founded Vitality Works so I could learn more and live this lifestyle, maybe in a self-supporting way, and do something that I had passion for. So that was the start of Vitality Works, and I found an old dental clinic that was empty. It had 6 practitioner rooms, and met a few people and said, why don't we all join forces and form a health cooperative? And in the true spirit of a co-op, share expenses, share income, and learn from each other. And started in October 2nd, 1982. And by the end of the first year, we were booked. And those were the days where it was true alternative medicine. I mean, we were freaks. We had long hair, viewing from the doors. People that came to see us were kind of like looking left and right to make sure nobody saw them when they went in the door. And they got better. They got better. I mean, we were overconfident and undereducated, approached it with passion from the little bit we knew, but we knew more than them and just enough to help them. And that was the beginning of it. And I feel very blessed to have been able to be involved at that time.
Do you remember when, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dad.
I think it's interesting that, you were youngish when you started, you didn't know everything, probably still don't know everything, but much closer to that. Or maybe you're further away from knowing everything. I think
you learn how much you don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that people get better because they're seeking getting better, and you're there with that mindset. And I'm not taking anything away from your knowledge or your skills or whatever, but there's a placebo element of them seeking out and finding someone whose goal is actually to help them feel better, not just deal with disease, but actually feel better.
Well, I've always thought that, placebo is real, and everything we should be infused with placebo, which is, life. I mean, it's a life affirmation that, this bottle of stuff is going to make you feel better. I just want there to be chemical reality in it from sources that are ethical and sustainable and prepared correctly, because there's real chemical medicine to it, and there's a long history of its use. And our goal is to understand, from traditions what really works today, get better. But the enthusiasm that you infuse people with hope and healing, and sometimes it's just you got to change your diet. Maybe you just go from eating meat 21 times a week down to 20, and they, let alone you get a vegan in who's really refining something, and sometimes it's what they need to hear is the next step, and that's all it can be sometimes. So helping people on their path.
Sure.
You made it seems like a conscious decision at some point to focus Vitality Works on B2B private label and contract manufacturing instead of direct, instead of consumer facing. And what was behind that decision? What led you to do that?
Yeah, almost like I had no choice. I mean, I spent 17 years in the clinic, full time, and a lot of teaching and training of health practitioners on how to use botanical medicines. And then when I decided to go out into brick and mortar, I went out there, and this was maybe the mid 90s, 1990s at that point. I said, hey, I got all this stuff. I've been doing clinic. I know what works. It's not just research. It's not just scholarly work. This is what works in the clinic. And I was doing lectures and people were paying me to talk and train them. And all of a sudden I went in the stores with the Vitality Works brand and they said, I don't care what your history is. I don't care if it works. Can I get a free set? And how much would you give me, free lectures and give me pens and hats and cups with our names on it? And I was like, I'm a practitioner. I was in full. And they said, I already have good brands on the shelf. And they did. I've got Herb Farm. I have Gaia. And they were out there early. And, what makes you different? And I said, well, this is a practitioner-based line. And they said, without all this free stuff, no. And then at the time, I knew some of the early founders of a company at that time called Wild Oats. And they knew I was training in their stores, consumers. They said, what if you do a line for us under the Wild Oat name? And I go, and we'll pick up 100 SKUs. I go, oh, well, okay. Is that how this works?
Yeah.
And so I did that. And then over time, I found that a lot of herbalist founded companies, those folks were selling, they're retiring, they're being bought by venture capital companies. They had no idea what those lines were about. They started to find me at Vitality Works as a practitioner who could help sustain the tradition of their lines, and they needed someone to make their stuff. And so there was a need for people to have an herbalist-oriented herb company making stuff for them, and I call it swimming downstream. People they wanted products in their line, and our local co-op was our first brick and mortar in reality, Lamont Needed Co-op, and they thought, why don't we have some of your stuff in our line? And it was a way to get product on the shelf and expand our mission of getting natural, well products into people's hands.
It's it might not surprise you, but it's pretty fascinating how many times we get asked, oh, do you make this in the back room? Can I see where you're making these products? We're like, you really don't want us to be making this in our back room.
Yeah.
And having gone to your having gone to your facility and see just like how robust and complex an operation it is. Like, I think that's another thing people don't realize is, I mean, you can certainly make your own tinctures and salves and other products in your home, and that has merit, but just like to the scale that Vitality Works is at, you have to have this incredibly robust system with, complex operations and ensuring that the product is safe and efficacious and all of that goes into it. So
yeah, for sure. The regulations on making dietary supplements is much closer to drug than food. It's technically a subset of the food regs, but it's being, the GMPs are closer to drug. And I even remember my early days as an herbalist, just like good cooking, food is only as good as your starting raw materials. And so we see fresh produce and the best fish from the fresh fish markets and whatever it might be. I remember my early days, I did a lot of neuromuscular oriented products for the massage therapy community. I was a keynote speaker at many national conferences. And then sourcing a common herb like arnica, we sourced 8 samples of arnica from the major suppliers in the world. We found 7 of the 8 had the wrong genus and species, and it was an adultery.
Wow.
Heterotheca inuloides, which I could buy for $3 a pound. And it looks like it, but you have to become a botanist and really know how to key it out. And the real stuff costs like $50 a pound versus $3 a pound. And lo and behold, it comes from Europe, not from Mexico. And we found that most of the raw materials were adulterated in the US marketplace. And, so quality control mandates that you really know how to speciate. You got to at least start with the right stuff that has vibrancy and is fresh and have materials that have therapeutic value. And then you layer on top of that any kind of ethical standing about, is it a fair trade item? Who harvested it? Where did it come from? What's the culture like? Which is beyond GMPs, which
Right.
has always been a part of Vitality Works. But it's just like the beginning of then once you get it, and the quality control and, how you process it and how you control your retained samples. And, just like, we have to prepare those in a way that will really work for people. And we're consumed by all that quality control and ensuring we have products that are efficacious. And what's on the label is really in the bottle. It sounds sophomoric and kind of stupid, but and it has to be therapeutically valuable materials.
Right.
And that's the minimum.
Right.
Then again, is it non-GMO? Is it gluten-free? Is it fair trade oriented? Is it sustainable? And all those things which take you to a different level that are beyond regulations. And then there's the politics of the company. So everywhere you use your money, it's supporting something in the culture that's going to affect the health. It's going to come back to you personally that we always don't think of. But in a true holistic, capitalistic context, that's something that really drives our decision-making process and makes us very conscious of what we do, which is maybe not what you were asking about, like, we do this in the back.
No, I mean, yeah.
Emily's very familiar with tangents.
Yeah.
And even non sequiturs and whatever. And I do want to say that I knew this. I didn't know everything you're saying, but I knew this, and it is the reason we treasure working with you both personally and with your company.
Right.
It's when people ask me, our decision-making process of bringing something in, and I remember one friend said, "I love the way you curate your products," and I said, "Curate? We agonize. We have fights over that." Curate. I mean, oh yes, curate. That's a better marketing term. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We don't storm off when someone doesn't bring something. That one of our team doesn't bring something in that we want. We curate.
Yeah.
We curate. But
Yeah.
I do want to give a shout out to our back room. Our back room
Yeah.
is not good for making herbal tinctures or the like, but it's actually well kept and clean.
Yes,
And
it
so,
is.
It must be well curated at least.
It's very well curated.
It's very well curated.
But actually, like to that point, I think it is a sequitur, because is that a thing? I mean, is a sequitur, because even though we don't make it in the back room, and it is very clean, but thank goodness we don't make it in the back room. There's just not enough space, first of all. But it is like, we think of Vitality Works as an extension of our back room, like, because we believe so deeply in the values that you as a company have upheld. And that's, I think, what was so important to us. I assume, I mean, I wasn't there at the decision-making table at that time, but when bringing on a brand like Vitality Works, it's not just like, oh, let's get some products and slap our label on them. It's like, does this company that we're putting our label on represent the values that we have as a business too? So I think there was a sequitur in there.
Yeah. We'll check that out afterwards.
Yeah, right.
I know, like, inept is a word, but ept is not a word, and I only learned that a few years ago, I think.
Yeah, we should have our thesauruses opened up and make sure we'll be clear in our communication.
Yeah, I think that that the decision making around bringing in any of our products is always not challenging, but it is methodical, and it is important to us. A lot of our products are available every place. For us, it's finding those products, one, that aren't every place, and two, that we know we can trust the ingredients, can trust the company, trust the people behind the company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all need to sell products in order to survive. I mean, we are living in an advanced capitalism with a lot of problems.
Late stage capitalism, some might say.
There's something, we don't know what stage we're in. I thought it was late stage in like 1968, 71, but and that really dates me. But I think it's critical to us. I mean, this is no joke. If I showed you the products that I take from Vitality Works, so that's 3 of the, I think, 11 bottles here. I didn't bring up the others from downstairs. I mean, it's not only that we research these products, but we try them out, we use them, we experience them. And because our store is measured, our success is measured on experience of the customer satisfaction, that has to do with our ability to communicate the value of what we're carrying and give them lifestyle advice as well. Frequently I'll just say, do you drink water? No, that's a problem. Well, I can tell you some great products, but really maybe think about drinking water, going for a walk, and so forth. Still buy my products, but you should do those things as well. So I've always said and been quoted often that it's nice to earn a living doing something we believe in. And, just like you started that clinic and it really became something much larger and much more important and much more significant. When I'm most gratified is when people have told us how much we've helped them over the years. And 46 years, we've had many tens of thousands of people whose lives we have helped. And that's especially gratifying when you're dealing with, forget the COVID crisis for a moment, when you're dealing with all kinds of other life challenges. And we've made lots of mistakes. Maybe you, Mitch, may not have made any mistakes, I'm not sure. But
one or two.
One or two. Well, my one or two were today. And,
you mean we were one or two mistakes were when trying to get onto this Zoom call in the first place?
That was one of them. Yeah, I really tried hard. But I think, the integrity of our business is absolutely key to who we are and what we do. And that's why our alignment with Vitality Works and other companies, I'm not putting them up on the, this pedestal that no one else can reach. They are part of a group of companies that we really treasure in this industry.
No, I appreciate that. And I mean, there's a certain level of authenticity for me that, our mission statement has never been make money or grow and sell, which is, ultimately what the goal in capitalism is. And I have seen many of my friends who've had great companies with shared mission, they decide to retire and they sell. And I've had interesting conversations, again, with companies I've really respected, where they said, this huge M&A company or this huge pharma type company, they share our mission, they share our values, they want to get more organic out there, they want to get more of these health products out there. And I'm like, isn't it all about how fast can I grow in the next 3 to 7 years and turn you again? Because I got to make money for my investors, and the rest is they've learned the language,
right?
But it's not their value system and mission really. They're co-opting some successes, and there's a lot of money interest in our industry because our growth has been amazing. We've become mass mainstream in certain ways, and I just think I've actually sat with maybe 5 or 6 different times people who wanted to buy us. And I get 1 or 2 emails a week of people who say, hey, you want to sit down and talk about that? And I've never had interest in selling, but I want to learn from them to see what it's about. And it's always, we want controlling interest, keep doing what you're doing, grow as much as possible, and we'll turn the company in 3 to 7 years. And I go, well, that's not why I'm in business. I don't want to have to make decisions based on making money for people invested in Vitality Works just to have a return on their investment. And you never want to have that pressure to say, I'll buy that unethical golden seal. I'll buy that raw material at 50 cents less per pound. I will make that product less potent, or I'll compromise somewhere, because the true mission is to maximize value and returns. And it's has nothing to do with why we exist. And every time I've sat with them, I go, that's not what this is about at all. So I've had no interest, and part of our mission statement literally contains the words to not sell out, which is literal and metaphorical in every way. It's part of our mission statement. And, I have a quick story I've shared with you before about a very large pharma company called us a couple of years ago. And they said, we're looking for a supplement company manufacturer, a brand for us. And it was the antithesis of why I exist and why Vitality Works is doing what they're doing in the mission. And I thought, I'm going to entertain this because I think I'll learn something. And this gigantic pharma company said, we've audited a couple dozen companies and none of them have qualified. And so I invited them out. And over the course of a few months, in the final audit with 4 people of lasting a week, where they spent tremendous amount of time with us, they said, you win. You qualify, you meet quality standards, you have content expertise, you have capacity. We want to give this to you guys. And this was, I think, Friday. It was about 7 p.m. The 4 executives left, and our core staff circled around, and we had a real come to truth moment, I'll say. And it says, well, why are we doing this? And this big pharma company said, all the successful stuff that you've done with brick and mortar and all these companies, we want to do that and blow it up and own that. I go, okay. This would put at jeopardy everything that we've ever done in terms of all the people who have supported us. It would consume a lot of the supply chain. We'd be working for these folks that didn't share core mission and core value. And in the middle of and I thought we needed to learn this, because it's like, be close with your friends, closer with your enemies. I don't think that's really true, but we had them around the table, and I wanted to learn. And all along it was a learning experience, and I didn't take it very seriously. And then we're sitting there at the end, and I have a picture back here of me back when I was, 21. I was starting Vitality Works, and with long hair and bandana. And my sweetie Gina comes up and holds the picture and goes, look at this picture. Look at this picture. Look at this, Mitch. What would Michael say if you do this? It's like, I share your conscience. I share your visions. I connect. You're iconic. You're a voice that's me and you and shared.
Right.
And I go, well, this was an exercise. Of course we're not going to do this. This was just a play. This was theater. We wanted to make sure, but it was nice. They said you win.
Right.
Have some choices. And after drafting a handful of emails of telling them no and revising, I said, I just don't think you're a good fit for us. Who's a good fit for them?
That probably blew their minds.
And so I think we were going to withdraw, and we respectfully declined to do business with you. And a month later, I was at Expo West, and the leader of the project cornered me in my booth and was really pissed and said, no one's ever said no to me before. Why did you say no?
Wow.
And it validated.
You didn't give him my name, I trust.
And the address. Yeah, I gave him everything. I got your back. I didn't give you up. And it felt great. It was an identifying moment. Who are we soulmates with? What is this all about?
Right.
And another long-winded, hopefully mini tangential answer to whatever the question initially was.
If we even asked a question.
Yeah, sorry. It makes sense at the time.
Yeah. How did Dad, you heard that story, not last year, but the year before at Expo West, because none of us were at Expo West this year, but how did that make you feel when you heard, this, what would Michael Kanter do scenario?
It made me feel like there was community. It made me, we all have our inner voices, and some of them lead you into the wrong direction.
Right.
I love when he went, somebody was confused by me once and said, God, Mitch, you're bipolar. I was really insulted because there's way more than 2 of me in here. It's way more than bi, it's more than try. It's the question of what voice we listen to that are your authentic self. And it
good. How did it make me feel? I almost burst into tears. I mean, it was one of those moments. It was like, I'm not a perfect person. I'm flawed. I remember telling our oldest when she was around 18 or 19, we're having some philosophical discussion, and I said, well, we're all flawed, Kate. And she went, wow, I never thought of it that way.
I mean, you mean except for me, of course.
Moving on from that part of the discussion, I mean, yes, except for you, maybe. It was one of those moments where it was really gratifying. I mean, we're all, life is complicated. Business is really challenging. There's no, you never go home at night and go, made it. Like it's all done. We've succeeded. We don't have to worry about anything anymore. Partially because the human condition is actually not that. the human condition is involved with a lot of struggle and a lot of turmoil and sorrow and disappointments, and I don't want, there are some people who are victims who never recover, and it's really hard. And our society is not fair. It would be so much better if it was fair. And that was one of those moments. I mean, who couldn't be seduced? I remember Abby Hoffman, the 60s radical, once talking about how nice it would be to win the lottery. And, talk about something that's immoral. And yet, just that thought, well, yeah, like, who wouldn't take, I mean, I'd take that money. I do know wealthy people who've given up most, if not all of their money, or a lot of their money in some cases, and sometimes most, and sometimes all of it. And I never assume that's going to happen with certain wealthy people that I know, but I do believe that we all know that we have these desires to be better human beings, to be kind, to be supportive, to be ethical. And, and there's no perfect person, and none of us are 100% because this life doesn't allow for that.
Yeah, I read this tweet the other day that I think speaks to this, which is, okay, hold on. If we abolish the police and then eventually we're going to look at abolishing prisons and then the military, is that what you guys want? An end to American imperialism, peace on earth, happiness and equality for all people? Slippery slope. Like,
right.
Like that's the consequence of fairness and equity, and it's like, well, yeah, that would be great.
And what's wrong with it?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking to that, you folks are based in New Mexico, and that's not where you're originally from, Mitch, but you've obviously spent most of your adult life in New Mexico, and building a community there. What's been important to you about being in New Mexico, or how have you built a community there?
Yeah, I was literally one of those guys who was hitchhiking around the country with a guitar on my back and a backpack, and I was going off to the Sonoran Desert to contemplate God with substances and good friends, and dropped off in Albuquerque and never left, and in New Mexico. And I thought it offered vast spaces for independence thinking, reinventing, soul searching. And it really, really appealed to me to help me become more of who I needed to be. And quickly found community in natural healing and sweat lodges and healthy eating and exercise. And the orientation in this part of the world is not about making money and the push for more, which is where I grew up. I mean, we compete with Mississippi for being state number 49 or 50 for per capita income, and it's really poor. And I quickly saw that, I could add some value in helping people and building this business here. A lot of family of origin thought I was crazy being out there here and doing it. One of the more motivating things I ever heard was my father said, I told him what I was going to do in New Mexico, and he said, "You don't know what the F you're doing, do you?" I said, "Well, thanks for the advice," and hung up the phone. I said, "I'm going to really do this now." And impressionable youngsters. And I realized over time is that there are a lot of people just need some dignity. They need a job. They need a cause. And we now are standing at 260 people at Vitality Works, making great medicines for people and helping people improve their lives and supporting organic growers and being conscientious about where we spend our money. And we've become a notable employer in this state. And because we are that, we have great access to our federal congressmen and our senators. I've become quite close with Senator Martin Heinrich, who now chairs the supplement caucus on the Hill. And we brought him to the industry and introduced him to people before Tom Harkin and Orrin Hatch retired. We've been close with every mayor and governor. They come to our place. So being a bigger fish in a smaller pond, we can have a lot of influence, and we don't squander that. And we try to be super intentful politically, economically. We have a foundation that we try to, give back to the community. We built Vitality Works in a very low-income community, so we were entitled to new market tax credit. So the only money we've ever borrowed in the history of Vitality Works, I've never wanted other people's money. As we made money, I don't want to put it in the stock market and support other companies either. So I kept putting it back into Vitality Works, invested in us and mission. And the only other money we took is when we moved into this low-income community. They did an economic impact study and felt like our impact on the community was going to be so great, we were entitled to these low interest loans that we didn't have to pay back. And so we took that money and just plowed it into Vitality Works, created more jobs, and put it into inventory. And as a consequence, the company kept growing, and our economic impact is studied every year. And we know the zip codes of every employee, the economic aspect of those communities, the financial impact. And it feels great. We feel like we're on a mission. It's not just making supplements, but it's also looking at the healthy consequence of making money and what you do with that money, and the impact environmentally, the impact socially, the impact racially, in every single way and form is no less important than did you drink enough water and did you eat produce and everything else. So from a true holistic model, those things are very important. So we feel like we've been able to make an impact, and that it feels great. It feels like we're on mission.
I agree. So not off topic at all, but, and it's a question that I hate when anyone ever asks me. So now I'm going to ask you, because I feel I have to pass this on to you, you know, me being older, not wiser, but older. You're on a desert island. You only, you know, you can.
Keep going.
You're on a desert island. You can only have, I don't know, X number of products to take care of yourself while you're there. You don't know how long you're going to be there. Why don't we say 5? I'll give 5 herbal or whatever type products. I mean, what would be the ones you might choose?
Well, if I'm on an island, it'd be different than if I was on a mountain peak.
All right, well, we can do both of those.
Okay, good, because they would be different.
No, I understand the likely difference.
Yeah. I prefer the mountain peak, but let's go with island.
Okay.
You know, after being in clinic for so long and people complaining of so many symptoms and trying to really approach natural healing from a holistic model, meaning we're not treating diseases, we're treating people. You start to see patterns with people around, you know, I didn't want to just keep doing allopathic treatments, but try to treat root cause and system dysfunction. And that so many things tied back to stress models that seem to liberate people's DNA or genetic predispositions or constitutional orientations. And you can use those different words in Western medicine or Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, but people get sick along the lines of who they are. If you can ameliorate how much people can handle, they tend not to get sick as much. And so my primary group of botanicals are adaptogens. So if I was only given one class of substances, they'd be adaptogens. And within those, I'm a big fan of things like reishi mushroom, because it modulates hormones through the stress axis and how your body responds to stress, so you don't go into secondary digestive or immune or autoimmune disorders. And it helps clean up the liver to a degree. It stimulates immunity to a degree. It's non-specific, true adaptogen. And so I look at those things about trying to keep me well versus waiting till I'm sick and taking supplements to try to turn around disease. I'd rather not try to turn around disease by staying well in the first place. And so in that kind of a climate, you know, that's why adaptogens I've been lecturing about them for, you know, decades. And they're taking off, right? It's like it's a pandemic. It's like, stay well, you know, so the ashwagandhas come in and there you go, Adrenaid, ashwagandha, Eleuthero.
We didn't plan for this.
yeah, thank you. It's a very nice product plug. I think, you know, if you're eating well, they're more important than mega supplement, vitamin, mineral things, because, you know, we should eat those in our foods. It's hard to modulate stress enough and do enough yoga and unwinding and meditation and massage. And we spend so much of our day winding up and following the news and trying to make a difference and taking care of, you know, employees and family and children and parents, and it's never enough. And oh my God. So it's hard to do enough to get back to unwinded plants where our body always wants to heal if you just get out of the way. That's the innate nature of anything that's alive. It wants to harmonize and be healthy. And we get in our way, so get out of the way. So in terms of the botanical world, they're adaptogens. So I would look, reishi is my king, queen favorite botanical, and it has been for 30 years. So we get organic reishi grown for us. And, if I was on a mountaintop, even though you didn't ask, being in the Southwest, my greatest healing botanical that I've personally experienced has been Osha, which is native to the Southwest. It's a sacred plant to the Native Americans and the Ute tribe. I've been to conferences and meetings with the Forest Service and the Ute tribe and wild harvesters and us about a detente about harvesting and where and how much is really there. And we help finance a true economic impact study of the wild harvesting of Osha, which is the first of its kind in the United States. I'm on the board of the American Herbal Products Association. We raise money to study it, but Osha is a plant that is incredibly healing. And when I break down, I tend to have respiratory issues. And here we are in Coronaville, in COVID-19. So Osha is amazing botanical because it stimulates immunity just in your lungs and stimulates resident macrophages. It bronchodilates, it warms the lungs, increases oxygen uptake by bringing blood into the surface capillaries of the lungs. And, life is breathless. It's hard to just have enough oxygen. But if I take Osha, I don't end up with throat issues, and I can breathe better. And, I had thoracic surgeries as a kid. So for me, it's a tonic plant that heals who I am constitutionally. So at high elevations for the oxygen uptake, keeping me warm, it's a real tonic healing plant that the Native Americans have recognized in this region of the world as being one of their primary sacred medicinal plants. And we have one family in a very poor part of northern New Mexico who've been harvesting Osha for 3 generations, and they go out with their children, their aunts and uncles, and they go to different places around the state, and they only harvest a certain amount to make sure it's sustainable, and they bring it directly to us. And it's a very controlled environment where we can get our Osha because it can be controversial. But each question brings up multiple tangents, but everything.
That's what we're asking for.
Yeah, well, it's important. I mean, these things are important because there's a lot of inaccurate information out there about things that people hear a little bit and make judgments on. And my job is to understanding the true source information about rumor. And so Osha has been really important for us. We just had some delivered a few weeks ago from a late spring harvest from this family that helps them survive economically, and they're very reverent about just harvesting for us in a certain amount of certain areas. And tonic for me, and it's in our Congestes formula, it's in your Respirys formula, and it's helping a lot of people right now in a time of COVID.
I think what you speak to some degree is like there's a greater macro conversation there around slowing down everything in general, like the slowing down of the slowing down and paying attention to your system, first of all, like where are you at, where are your stress levels, where are your energy levels, sort of like understanding your body. And then the wild harvesting in a thoughtful and sustainable way that doesn't take too much, but recognizes what's a sustainable level to harvest that will continue the, flourishing of the crops. And then also the slowdown of information, that we live in this information age where rumors or news can travel so quickly before people really stop to think and talk about it and learn from different sources. And to me, it just seems all connected. Like our lives are just so hyper these days and so attuned to every new newsworthy thing that comes out that we don't stop to, sit down and ground ourselves and take a deep breath and take some reishi and take some Osha and, think about where it came from in the first place and even honor the incredible amount of effort that it took to get from plant to bottle to store, and all of the people involved. Like, it just strikes me that our culture is so hyper and maxed out, and that in and of itself, that's a health issue.
I appreciate the, and I'm being serious and sincere here, the tangents, because as you say, it is not, people tend to think also, frequently someone will say a certain herb is for something. I mean, they're very didactic and reductionist about these things instead of thinking about.
And that's what Western medicine teaches us, right? Like, take Advil for pain, or whatever. It's like, solve the problem.
Right. So to me, it's always important, this herb is not for, this herb may be beneficial and may in combination with other lifestyle and other things and so forth. And it's not even that life is so complex, but it's also not that simple in my view. One important thing to me that I'm aware of is that in your part of the country, the Navajo are quite poor, living in very challenging conditions, and we know that you've done some support around that, and I was hoping you might talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Navajo Nation has the highest per capita rate of a positive tests for COVID and death rates that's been devastating in the Four Corners area, which covers the northwestern part of New Mexico. And, we're constantly trying to see what we can do as a part of our foundation at the least. And I networked with Martin Heinrich, Senator Martin Heinrich's office, who had a great deal of outreach. And I connected with them. And one of the first things we did when hand sanitizer became very hard to find is that we allocated a lot of our alcohol that we use for extraction purposes to make hand sanitizer. And initially, we took care of family and friends and employees and make sure everybody had that enough of that PPE. And then I mentioned it to Heinrich and their staff, and do you need any? And they said, no, we don't. And this was early on, before the news was going out about the devastation on the Pueblos and on the reservations and the Indian nations. They said, but if you have any extra capacity, we can get some. At first, it was the Zia Pueblo, Jemez Pueblo, San Ildefonso. And we have, New Mexico has the highest percentage of Native Americans per capita, and we have quite a few that work for us as well. And we try to see who was here and what can we do. And so we started supplying those Pueblos with thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer. And then it became more apparent with the Navajo Nation being hit. And then the last runs we've been doing is that we've been supplying thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer to the Navajo Nation, which I believe maybe 25% of the households there don't have running water. Multi-generations live in one house that are tiny, you can't distance. They can't wash their hands, and they're remote. And so it was a crisis of horrible proportions. So we took time out, and I was getting calls even from, there was a big natural foods chain that said, if you can make hand sanitizer, we'll take 500,000 bottles a month. It's like, wow, I think I need to take care of the local community first, and I need to bottle my OSHA and my Rishi, and that's not who we are, and you can't even get the bottles anyways.
Right.
And then there's shortages in logistics on alcohol. We got to be really intentful, and I got to take care of local communities. So we didn't even entertain any of that. But we've been supplying, and these are all free bottles and free runs of any kind of bottle that we can get our hands on. And the outpouring of need and thanks and has been profound. It feels like we got to take care of the local community, act locally, think globally, of course, as much as we can. And to me, it's not extra. Having a foundation is an extra. Giving back is an extra. Paying people above average is not extra. Being ethical is an extra. Supporting organic is an extra. It's what we should all be doing. So when people thank me, it seems bizarre, because I think, why is everybody not doing this? It's not extra. It's a requirement if you have any sense of soul and purpose, and you know that you're alive, and it's not just about you. So it was there were easy, no-brain decisions, to do as much of that as we can.
Yeah, even we tried to get some hand sanitizer from you, and at least the way when I explained it to other people why that wasn't happening, I said, well, Mitch said, 1, we're having trouble getting bottles. 2, we're having trouble getting tops to the bottles. 3, we're having trouble getting the enough alcohol to make the product. And 4, the Navajo Nation needs it more than you do. At least that was the way I interpreted what you said.
Okay.
With the first thing being
those
important.
were your exact words, but I enhanced it a little bit, and it was for real though. It was like,
yeah,
yep, that shut me up for real. That is not my problem right now.
Doesn't mean I love you any less.
It means he loves you more because, he recognizes the interconnectedness of our entire system. I mean, I think that's
Likewise.
like the false narrative is that COVID was the great equalizer. Obviously, that is not true because we live in a
Right.
deeply inequitable society, but it is showing the incredible interconnectedness of our communities and how important it is that public health cover all of us and not just the wealthy and the privileged. And I think that what you're doing is providing a necessary, but ideally not the only, response to that need and solving some, or, helping to solve some of those inequities that exist. And more, every single company that makes a profit or, should be doing what you're doing. So I think, that's a really important point, that the thanks isn't necessary, but, it's also, I think more companies should look to Vitality Works as a model. And we would be in a much better place in society if they did. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, we don't market what we're doing. We don't do it for the purpose of self-congratulations or
Right.
certificates of being ABC certified or any of this other stuff, because it's not extra that requires recognition or diploma on a wall.
Right.
Those things are good, and hopefully, people will learn from it. But I'd rather get back to work and do more of the same than fill out paper.
Right.
Hopefully,
No,
Okay. I have one last question, and then I'll let Michael have one if he has one. So, aside from your desert island or mountaintop products that you would have with you, obviously you have a quite robust and stressful job, but you always are smiling, and it's always seems like you understand the value of living a good and balanced life. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that you do personally in your daily life, or or that you wrap into your year so that you can be healthy and well, like we tell all of our customers to be?
Yeah, well, I try to walk the talk, and I joked earlier, I made 1 or 2 mistakes in my lifetime, and I made 1 or 2 mistakes before I woke up. But I do try to walk the talk. So, I've always said, you can't supplement away no exercise, a bad diet, no sleep or lack of sleep. You can't supplement away your childhood that was problematical. So, you do your therapies and, and you go through the hard times like that. And, I exercise at least 6 days a week to the point where I'm dripping sweat and, I may not like it. And it's like, I got it because I sit in this chair too much. I eat really well. I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep. I make sure I don't compromise my values. So I have our core values posted. So when I can buy cheaper raw materials from unethical people, it's a really short conversation with myself. You just don't do it. I like to be aware of all the options out there, just like having big pharma inside my space, because it's always a choice. And I want to be understanding those processes. And, so our folks work really hard. And that's all I can ask. And we make mistakes. And I just say, you You make a mistake, you say, oops, and you can't get it all done, you say help. And there's great 4-letter words out there. Hope, data, fact, math. I'm really fond of 4-letter words, and yes, I do use the rest of them because I can't think of one sometimes. So, it's just trying to be authentic, and I surround myself with people that, sometimes, I can think I'm wise, and they remind me I'm actually a wise ass, and so I have a lot of friends who are smart, but are in on the joke. And so we can maintain our sense of humor. So as we're going through all this and it's stressful and it's never enough, maintaining dignity, maintaining a sense of humor, and remembering, my addiction is work. I'd work myself to death. I have to pull myself to go home and sit there outside, glass of wine, and just, I want to go back to the laptop. I want to go do more. I want to make more stuff. I want to formulate more. And I have to stop, and I have to take vacations where I go somewhere and not do 5 islands in 7 days and backpack around. I got to sit in one spot till my mind is okay doing less. Because that's not what I want to do. And I think it helps me come back into the saddle and be neurotic and compulsive and, still look for that approval from my dad, who said, you don't know what the F you're doing, who's already dead. So, stop it. We all have our variation on the theme of the same story, right?
Absolutely. I don't think I have any more questions that's a perfect ending, and it really speaks to the partnership, the relationship, the love, everything about it. So for me, it's important that not only that we did this interview, but that we recognize who our true partners are and how important they are to us.
Well, when you asked me to do this, I thought, Banter with Kanter was great. And if I could take the liberty for just this one to say Banter with Kanter and Coven.
Oh, for sure.
Miracle thing. I read an interview with Bob Dylan, my hero, this morning. Just for the one segment, thank you. But you guys are amazing. You guys are an inspiration to me. We're very synergistic. You're creating a legacy with next generation. I can only wish for the same. You're doing great work, and thank you for the partnership and opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll do it again.